As the Donald has just vowed to slap 104% tariffs on China, none of this namby-pamby 25% tariff stuff, the stakes are rising globally for Australia too. Now, we need to explain something really important here today. Many of you will know about this, but not all. We're discussing the nuclear option. China selling US Treasury bonds, driving up yields and prices down, sending the world into global recession. The bond market. Now, the bond market is the biggest market in the world, or they call them US Treasuries, the US bond market. It's basically just debt. It's just the US borrowing money, issuing a bit of paper and saying, give me a few million and we'll give you this yield. This market, it dwarfs share markets. The market for US debt is $50 trillion US or thereabouts, about half the world's bond debt. So as I said, when you issue a bond, you are just borrowing money. Now, who are the lenders? Who buys this stuff? Who owns the most US bonds? China and Japan, who've had massive trade surpluses over the years and propped up the US economy by buying their debt. So what have they done with the money? They've just whacked it into bonds. It was called a safe haven, this gigantic big market, backed by the US currency and US military power and imperialism. But it is no longer safe. It is no longer a safe haven because the Donald is in charge. Now, this is the bit to understand. Bond prices are the inverse of yields. So when you sell a lot of bonds, you drive the price down. And when you buy a lot of bonds, the price goes up. But if the price goes down, the yield goes up, or the interest rate. So if people are selling bonds, if China's selling bonds now, which people are saying they are, there's no way of knowing. There's not a lot of visibility in this market. But if they are selling bonds, then US interest rates are going up because bond prices go down. And that's what's been happening this week. Now, who knows how many they are selling, but it's a heck of a lever to pull. Just imagine it, the Chinese sitting there, the CCP leadership, a heck of a lever to pull. Let's just drive the US economy into depression and get rid of this Donald Trump guy. Are they doing that? Well, it's a lever they can certainly tinker with, and they probably are. It's probably happening right now because bond yields have been going up in Australia as well. Pressure on interest rates. Now, as we know, tariffs are just a tax. So Donald is slamming massive taxes on imports around the world. Now, that means the prices for these imports are going up, possibly at the same time that there's upward pressure on interest rates because of people fleeing for the hills in the bond market, selling US bonds and putting their money elsewhere. So these knuckleheads in the White House have hit their own voters the hardest. Those are the people most susceptible to price rises for everything which is imported. Now, why would China want to flog its bonds, you ask? Good question. If they sell a whole lot, the price goes down for the rest of the bonds that they own. And they're simply hurting demand for their own goods in their biggest market, America, by hurting the consumer. But Donald's tariffs are doing that for them anyway. This is a crisis. 100% Chinese goods, simply doubles the price of everything from China. All the consumer goods and the APIs, the pharmaceutical ingredients. China manufactures 80 or 90% of the world's APIs, which go into medicines. iPhones, you name it. It's difficult to comprehend the scale of what's going on here, the sheer abomination, which is US leadership in the world. Australia's biggest export, iron ore, is tumbling. The price of iron ore is tumbling because China obviously is affected by the Donald's ruminations. That means less money going into our economy as iron ore prices and coal prices fall, which means less revenue for the budget, which means fewer services for Australians. So China selling US bonds is the nuclear option. But there are two other things to consider. Tariffs mean less trade, which means lower economic activity worldwide. And that's what's happening right now. Trump's aim is to boot up US manufacturing to replace imports, but he's driving the world into recession. And it'll be a long time before they can replace global importers or exporters with homebrew, US-made manufactured goods. Replacement would take years if it could happen at all. The second thing here is that the market's turmoil means severe dislocation, as per the GFC when the big bailout, the mother of all bailouts, happened for Wall Street. And that will trigger, these things trigger further fallouts. When the price of a security, a share, a bond or something falls 20%, that triggers things, margin calls, so that you have to top up. If you haven't got any money to top up, you bail out, you default. So along with and this is going to happen to funds around the world. So along with the bond mayhem, there's a lot of stuff going on in the share market as well. Funds are in trouble, forced selling. And what happens when the share prices go down? The cost of capital for the company rises. Now, there is precedent for this. And people aren't talking about it that much. They are a little bit because it's such a horrendous thing to contemplate. But the US share market crash of 1929, a year or two later, they introduced the Smoot-Hawley reforms, they called them, where they hiked tariffs around the world. What happened there? The Great Depression. Because trade dropped 20% or thereabouts. The Great Depression. And then hyperinflation in Germany, then the rise of Hitler, then World War II. We're not sure about the parallels there, but there's a few more than just on the economic scene right at the moment. What's going on in American government, persecution of free speech and freedom of expression and assembly. But what we are saying is that it's impossible to predict what's going to happen from here. Only that things are likely to get worse with the disruption to supply chains and a bunch of total ninnies in the White House. If anything says it all, here it is. And this is scarcely believable. That Donald, as he calls himself, tanked his own economy based on a book that his son-in-law had found on Amazon. Jared Kushner. He told Jared to find him an economic advisor, because you need an economic advisor when you're president. Someone who could make him look tough and talk tough on China. So Jared went on Amazon, as you do, looking for an economic advisor to preside over world affairs. He searched Amazon, saw a book called Death by China, and thought the title was pretty cool. So he cold called the author, Peter Navarro, and gave him a job. Navarro had very little economic cred, just an obsession with tariffs and made-up expert called Ron Vara in his book, whom he cited repeatedly. Who is Ron Vara? Well, Ron Vara is a fictional economist which Navarro, Trump's number one economic advisor, had invented. It's an anagram of his own name, Navarro Ron Vara. Now, this sounds like a fairy tale, but it's true. This is literally, as the tweeter says, how the Trump administration created its trade policy, one that wiped out $11 trillion in wealth. We're probably only up to $5 trillion by now, but it's getting worse. Crashed the markets and is nearly sending the world into another Great Depression. A fake expert, a book cover, an Amazon search. That's it. That's how we got here. And as for Australia, incidentally, in the 10% tariffs, we got off lightly. Trump's ninnies claim that they are trying to tackle trade deficits and US trade deficits, but they actually run a trade surplus with Australia. Yes, surplus, not deficit. So why are we subject to tariffs?
Australia is one of our strongest allies. We have the AUKUS relationship, which is key to their national security. It's key to our industrial base, so we can continue to build subs. Terribly important. Interesting thing with Australia is we have a free trade agreement with Australia. We don't have tariffs. We even have one of the few industrial countries, we have a trade surplus with Australia. So Ambassador Kerr, can you explain to me how it helps America's national security or our trading balance when we have, and I loved your fancy Greek formula, which was basically bad math on steroids formula, how with the trade surplus, with this strong relationship, Australia got hit with a 10% tariff as well?
Well, right at the moment, they're whinging and whining, saying, why don't the Australians buy beef from us? Well, apart from biosecurity concerns or the chemicals, we are one of the biggest exporters of beef in the world. I mean, what do you want? Do you want us to buy your iron ore and coal at inflated prices too? It just doesn't make any sense. Now, how did Australia get locked up in this Brobdingnagian stuff up? It's foreign policy. Our foreign policy is now In the old words, completely rooted, allied to a bunch of dangerous morons engaged in genocide in the Middle East and the destruction of the world economy. Time to get out of AUKUS. The greatest foreign policy hospital pass, the greatest foreign policy blunder in history. The timing could not have been worse. Please like, share and comment in the section below. Oh, by the way, Trump still has one fan in the global media, our boy Rupert. They're still defending him. All the experts on Sky News Australia and in the US. Patience is wearing thin around the world, obviously, but that's how we got here. That's how we got Trump in the White House, Murdoch. Anyway, please like, share and comment in the section below and hit us up on Patreon if you can afford it.